I was quite an emotional mess after Thank You, Dr. Crane. This is such a solid episode. I'm really surprised it's not the season finale, actually. I'm glad we have a few more episodes, but it feels like it could have been a phenomenal ending to this second season. This is the 8th episode of the second season of Frasier. It's directed by the wonderful Kelsey Grammer, and there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. I will also say very quickly, at the time of recording, only 4 minutes are uploaded onto Amazon Prime, Paramount via Amazon Prime. However, the full episode in the UK is available on Paramount directly. So if you have a subscription there, you can watch it. You can also get a free trial at the time of recording for 7 days. So you can also sign up, I guess, and watch it. And certainly it is a phenomenal episode. And I'd say watch it sooner rather than later because it's absolutely beautiful. There are various things that I'm glad I didn't know about before watching it. All I knew before watching this is that Frasier went back to KACL. And there are so many other beautiful moments in this that I'm glad I didn't have any spoilers before that. So my advice there is that it's definitely worth watching sooner rather than later. And as I said, huge spoilers from now. Starts off with everybody sitting in Mahoney's, establishing Frasier is going back to Seattle. Niles and Daphne have moved to Sedona, which gives us the reason why they didn't see Niles and Daphne when they went back to Seattle. And we do have a subplot. Alan is being kind of mean to David, and David finally stands up for himself. So he decides, kind of against Olivia's wishes, David will now be Olivia's assistant. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. Cut immediately to KACL. Freddy's there because Frasier kind of said they'd go to a Mariners game, which doesn't happen. Frasier actually brought him along because he wanted to show Freddy his achievements and hopefully make Freddy proud of him. Again, we'll come back to that in a bit. The scene when Frasier walks into KACL and Roz is there, Bulldog and Gil, and it's so beautiful. It's so moving. Bulldog is gay, which I hadn't heard was happening, so that was pretty interesting. There is a moment where we're kind of briefly led to believe it's Gil, but it's Bulldog. And then this is when I started to get really emotional. We then go to Cafe Nervosa, which I didn't expect. And I didn't know they were going there. And Frasier meets a former caller called Lou, played by Rory O'Malley. And 20-something years ago, Lou had phoned Frasier for advice, and Lou ultimately ended up quitting his job to become a magician. And it didn't exactly go according to plan. And when Lou leaves, Frasier feels really guilty because he feels like he's ruined Lou's life. And he says at one point, "My name stands for something in this town." And then the barista says, "Latte for Frasier," which I loved. Also, I like the fact that even Cafe Nervosa itself seems a little bit more contemporary, which is very well done. Subtle things here and there. It still feels like Cafe Nervosa, but it also feels different. And Frasier decides at the end of this scene he's going to talk to Lou, largely because he left behind a bunny rabbit. And we have a bunny. We're then back in Boston. David is collecting his things from Alan's office, and in walks Mason, played by Carmen Garcia. This is Alan's new assistant, and I have to say, what we see of Mason I really liked. I thought the character was really great. There are definitely similarities to David, which I rather enjoyed. We're then back briefly in Seattle, and Frasier helps Lou get over his fear of clocks. It's a pretty interesting moment. It's an interesting story with Lou, and also it's nice to see Frasier actually helping somebody and doing what he does best, because in the new series we don't really get to see that often. Obviously, most of the time we saw that in the previous or the original series was because of KACL. So it's always nice to see that. We're then back in Boston, and Mason quits. Alan clearly misses David, and David ends up coming in to give Olivia her crumpets, and Alan, with some prompting from Olivia, says to David, "I owe you an apology and I will give it to you eventually." I feel like that is the best we're going to get out of Alan, but in Alan language, that really shows that he cares about David. And it was a lovely moment for both of them, and I feel like we actually haven't seen a lot of David being Alan's assistant in this season, but I'm glad that that's kind of wrapped up nicely there. The rest of the episode, apart from the final moment, is in Seattle, and we're down at KCL. Lou arrives. He's been kicked out of his apartment, and this is because of advice Frasier gave him. And Frasier is talking with Lou, so Gil has to cover for Frasier, which was an absolute delight. And KCL is basically falling apart. They can't even afford tea bags and cups. They don't have air conditioning. And it seems like everything is just not what it once was. And Frasier gives Lou this advice that sometimes you just need to move on from your career. If it's not going anywhere, if it's not where you wanted it to be, you may have invested a lot of time into it, but sometimes it's in your best interest to step away, to change direction. And while he was giving this advice to Lou, he was also giving it to Roz. What does that mean for the future of Roz? What's going to happen with the character? Where is she going next? I'm very keen to find out. We then have Lou climbing onto the window ledge, and everybody, including myself, jumped to the conclusion that he was, well, going to jump. This is, I think, like the third or fourth time somebody in Frasier's world, including Frasier himself, has been on the ledge of a window. It seems to be a common occurrence for Frasier. However, he wasn't actually going to jump. He was just trying to get Lucky, the rabbit who had wandered off. And Frasier reveals that he doesn't think Freddy is proud of him. And they have a private conversation with Lou still on the ledge, and that's not the case. Of course Freddy is proud of his father, and it was a really lovely moment. And then Lou also found his voice, because all of this time he's been doing things that other people have told him, and he hasn't listened to his internal thoughts, his own thoughts, and finally he's going to do that. And it was a really great moment for Lou. So the scene itself was really powerful. We're then back at KCL, and this is the point when I started just almost sobbing, because from this point on it's just absolutely gorgeous. We're in KCL. It's like no time has passed, with Bulldog saying this stinks, this is total BS, and Frasier sits down and says, this is Dr. Frasier Crane, I'm listening. And that would have been a beautiful ending, but what comes next is just even more gorgeous. They go to McGinty's, and they being Frasier and Freddy, and they're talking about Martin. And there's a photo of John Mahoney on the bar. We also have a photo of David Angel on the bar as well, up high. And the positions of the two photos are just absolutely perfect. The eyes go to both of them immediately, and we get a close-up of the photo of John Mahoney, and it's very, very, very emotional. It's very difficult to get through the scene. And just as things are getting a little bit too heavy, Bulldog comes in and says to them, what are you guys doing in a gay bar? And this is obviously, well, funny in itself because it's unexpected, but also they're talking about how some things stay the same, some things often change, and they were saying, McGinty's is similar, but actually, no, that's not the case. And I like that they brought in that bit of humour, and also brought Bulldog into it again, right at the end there. And then the final scene, I don't care for it, but it's fine. Eve goes into the apartment, and she brings over, I will say, the tiny plant. She said she'd bring over a plant so that she could have some of Frasier's fancy wine. And I think they got the tiniest plant they could find that would still look pretty good on television, which made me laugh. So not a bad ending, but certainly compared to the rest of the episode, it's fine. It's a phenomenal episode. As I said, it feels so strong, so powerful, so emotional, that this should have, in my opinion, been the season finale. However, I don't know what the next two episodes have in store, so maybe I will change my mind about that in due course. I feel like I said that about the previous season as well. Maybe I didn't, I can't remember, but I have just looked on Wikipedia trying to re-jog my memory, and the last episode, as with the previous season, is actually the Christmas episode, so yeah, that makes perfect sense. This is a phenomenal episode. I usually try and name personal highlights once I finish doing my discussion. I can't. I mean, I can try. Personal highlights, just being back at KCL with Roz and Gil and Bulldog, being in Cafe Nervosa, huge surprise, didn't expect it, being in McGinty's, the photos of John Mahoney and David Angel. The only thing that would have made it better is some photo of Eddie or something, but that would be asking for a little bit too much. It's a gorgeous episode, really thoroughly enjoyed it. Very irritating that there are only 4 minutes of it currently on Amazon Prime, but as I said, at the time of recording, the full episode in the UK is available on Paramount's website specifically. I absolutely adored it. Thank you, Dr. Crane. It's a perfect title. A very emotional episode. And I absolutely adored it.